Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. The blame game over the government shutdown continues. Republicans and Democrats are trading jabs after negotiations on a short-term funding bill fell apart and the clock ran out. One of the major sticking points is a Democratic demand to extend Obamacare tax credits to avert a hike in premiums next year. Vice President J.D. Vance told Fox News last hour that's not a reason to shut down federal agencies.
Of course, we all want to ensure that Americans have low-cost health care, so let's work together on that. You don't shut the government down. You don't take the government as a hostage.
Speaking on CNN, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer hit back at the GOP.
Republicans thought that they could barrel us into a shutdown because they didn't want to protect the health care of the American people. Well, now they've seen they can't bully us, they can't barrel us.
The government shutdown means hundreds of thousands of federal workers are now furloughed and key services are either halted or could be delayed. President Trump says the National Institutes of Health will invest in data sharing to boost the use of artificial intelligence in detecting and treating pediatric cancers. NPR's Yuki Noguchi reports the move coincides with massive cuts in federal funding for scientific and medical research.
The Trump administration says it's committing an additional $50 million to an NIH program to build on ways to apply AI to fighting cancer. Michael Kratsios directs the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy.
Using artificial intelligence, researchers will be able to, for example, build scalable models to predict how a child's body responds to therapies, letting doctors forecast cancer progression and minimize treatment side effects.
The $50 million investment comes on the heels of billions in federal cuts to various health agencies involved with cancer prevention and research. Yuki Noguchi, NPR News.
A new NPR PBS News Marist poll out today finds the overwhelming majority of people want kids vaccinated before going to school. NPR's Domenico Montanaro reports.
The survey indicates 82% support requiring children to be vaccinated against certain diseases such as measles, mumps, and rubella before attending public school. That includes 71% of Republicans, but Republicans don't feel as strongly as independents or Democrats do about this. For example, 77% of those who voted for Democrat Kamala Harris in the 2024 presidential election felt strongly that children should be vaccinated, while only 30% of Trump voters did. The Trump administration, led by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has consistently moved to limit vaccinations and downplay their effectiveness. Domenico Montanaro, NPR News, Washington.
This is NPR News in Washington.
Good morning. You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Stephen Ponson. It is now 9:04. Governor Ron DeSantis has appointed 3 people to the vacant seats on the St. Augustine Airport Authority. The local board of elected officials oversees operations of the commercial airport. 3 members of the board resigned earlier this year to avoid criminal charges in the wake of a Sunshine Law scandal. Now Gerald Dredge, Mario DePola, and Nick Primrose will take over for the remainder of their terms. Dredge is a former St. Johns County Sheriff's Office captain and currently serves as the vice president of the Florida National Guard Foundation. DePola is an engineer and a member of the North Florida TPO's advisory committee, and Primrose, a lawyer, is an executive at the Jacksonville Port Authority. Primrose led an unsuccessful race for a seat in Florida's legislature in 2024, but DeSantis appointed him to the Board of Trustees for St. John's River State College earlier this year. The new members will begin their terms on the Airport Authority once they're approved by the state Senate. Camden County commissioners are dropping plans to raise property taxes by 18% to help pay for infrastructure improvements. Commissioners say instead they'll focus on a rollback rather than the tax increase, and they'll review other possible funding sources or postpone projects to help taxpayers. This change follows public outcry from residents and pushback from lawmakers locally and in the state. The county was planning on using the money generated from the tax increase for projects that included a new jail and sheriff's office, animal control facility, and for park maintenance and enhancements. We'll have low rain chances today here in northeast Florida and temperatures in the 80s.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Eric and Wendy Schmidt through the Schmidt Family Foundation, working toward a healthy, resilient, secure world for all. On the web at theschmidt.org. This is NPR.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, imperfect environmentalism. It's one way younger eco-advocates are engaging their peers at a time when some challenges seem insurmountable. Later, a Jacksonville arts institution enters a new phase. The Cummer's new CEO shares what she has in store for the historic museum. But first, as challenges to the planet's health evolve, so do the people working to protect it. On the First Coast, the mission has been picked up by young, persistent, and social media savvy advocates. Here to tell us about it, we're joined by Rhiley K. Hodges, founder of Watered Down. Good morning, Rhiley.
Good morning.
Ryan Worthington, Florida master naturalist and environmental advocate. Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning.
Tiffany Bess, sustainability, education, and outreach specialist with the city of Jacksonville and founder of Apple Rabbit Compost. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good morning.
And Jimmy Orth, executive director of the St. John's Riverkeeper. Good morning, Jimmy.
Good morning.
So, Jimmy, you've actually been with your organization for 20 years. So, you're not a kid, but you have really focused on bringing young people into the movement. That is sort of your mission in a lot of ways. Why is that necessary?
Well, for one, we're getting old. Some of us old guard environmentalists, we've been around a long time, but I think what I'm seeing and I'm excited about is the younger people I'm seeing that are doing it maybe in different ways, like using social media as a platform to really engage more people in this process. So I'm learning actually a lot from the folks here at the table about how to do this work. Sometimes the traditional ways of approaching environmentalism, they're just not working anymore. And we've got to bring new people to the table. We need to build a really strong, young, youthful, diverse coalition of advocates for our river and for our environment. So I'm excited to be here to talk about this because it's also kind of a time when I'm getting older. I hope I'm not doing this forever, Ann.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to pass the baton on at some point too.
And when you say that sometimes the older ways of doing things are not working, I'm interested in that. I mean, often the movement is a little bit older. But it also has more time, perhaps more resources than younger people do. And so what is not working about the old way of doing things?
Well, I think, it was interesting when you and I have worked together for a long time. When I started working for St. John's Riverkeeper over 21 years ago, we would work with the media, the Times Union, with the Folio when you were there. We relied a lot on the media to get the word out about the work that we were doing. Traditional media, the news stations, they're still relevant, but we're not getting as many people are not hearing the message. They're not getting involved in those ways. And so we're having to rely more on social media and other ways, other types of programming to get people involved as well. And so that's what they're doing, is really bringing people to the table that maybe didn't even think of themselves as environmentalists before too.
Yeah.
And that's something too, is we want people that, because I think all of us at heart are environmentalists, even if we call ourselves that or not.
Rhiley, I want to ask you about your creation, Watered Down, which is on YouTube. It's a series of interviews with people in environmental activism, sometimes in environmental jobs. How did you choose to start that interview series? What made you want to begin that?
So it's a compilation of things. I started in 2021. I was in undergrad at UCF, and I realized through my studies that a lot of people knew what climate change was, but they didn't know the environmental issues that fed into it, right? So when you see it on the news, it's like this big thing. And I said, people don't understand it. Let's water that down. Let's break it down. So that's where the name came from. But I think I just started talking with people. It was also during the time of COVID, so I couldn't talk with people in person, but it was like a burning desire, like this information has to get out there. So I reached out to, the first person was fast fashion. That was our first topic. I reached out to an owner of a secondhand, she used material to make bags. And I'm like, let's talk about fast fashion. And that was a big success. I didn't realize people were into that information, or just that they were interested but didn't know how to tap into that type of field. So after that, it just kept going. I've talked to land conservationists, public officials, Our recent talk I did with Luke Runyon, he's also the director of Thirst Gap, How to Live with Less on the Colorado River. So there's, water management issues happening out there. Just kind of reaching out to people. So I think that's how it started. Yeah.
And so we're talking about how to bring people into the movement. What was it that brought you into the movement? Was there a single thing that sparked your interest?
I started my undergraduate studies as a biology major, and I was like, I do not want to know about the anatomy of a plant. But I took a class called ethnobotany, and I loved the relationship humans had with the environment. So I said, okay, let's shift. So I shifted. Um, After that, it just was like a ripple effect. I got offered the role to be a conservation scholar for Doris Duke Conservation Scholarship Program at the University of Washington. So it just kind of kept going from there, working with the Trust for Public Land, and it just took a life of its own.
In terms of formative experiences, Ryan Worthington, you grew up very much in the mix of an environmental landscape. Your father was a park ranger here in Florida, and so you really had very early experiences, kind of deep and intimate experiences with the wild places of Florida. How did that impact you growing up?
Oh, it was pretty significant because I did grow up in a variety of Florida state parks, and some of them are remote, so you don't have neighborhood kids to play with. So it's really getting out there and exploring, swimming in any body of water I could find, checking out the animals and everything else. And it becomes very foundational. And so, as I grew older and had a career and everything else, when I returned to exploring Florida a lot more in my free time, I got to compare what I'm seeing now versus then, and it kind of bothered me a little bit, shifted me towards activism. But yeah, it was very foundational, just enjoying the springs and the little Talbot, the beaches there, and the lakes. It was a wonderful childhood.
And you have a really, heavy, abundant presence on Instagram. You post a lot of videos, and it's a really interesting mix that I'm curious how you have gone about achieving. Some of it is just absolutely adorable videos of armadillos and otters in the wild, and it's got kind of this whimsical music to it, And then some of them are really sort of dense and intense, or teaching people about complicated issues, talking about policy changes that are changing the landscape of Florida. So how do you strike that balance? And what is it that you're trying? Who are you speaking to?
I wish I could say there was like a real strategy behind it, but it's mostly, I do spend a lot of time, road tripping around Florida from the Keys to the Panhandle, just really enjoying it. And I always have my camera phone out and recording things. So things I find interesting, I like to share it. But at the same time, I want folks to know, hey, this is really worth protecting. Florida has so many amazing things, like I'm used to the tannic swamps of like Northeast Florida, but when I was in the Everglades, it's crystal clear. You'll be in cypress trees, and you'll look through and the water's clear, like spring-like. But, one thing that I just remember clearly is how the springs were when I was a kid. They had some algae in them, but it wasn't like what it is now. And so I saw this deterioration, and as I kind of followed the breadcrumbs, a lot of it was policy or, could be a lack of enforcement. And then I realized, hey, we got to do something about this because it's not getting better, it's getting worse.
And so I think out of all of the projects, really speaks, Tiffany, to a very local solution. The Apple Rabbit Compost is a local food scrap composting business. And we've talked to you about it on this program before, but I'm curious because, Ryan's talking about, well, we've got to do something about this. And I'm curious for you and for the people in your peer group, how we have to do something becomes like, I have to do something, and how you get there.
So I think when Rhiley said that she had like a burning desire to do what she's doing, that resonated with me because that's essentially how I started Apple Rabbit Compost. So when my eyes finally opened up to how much waste we're really producing, it was hard to turn my head from that. And then I just saw it everywhere. And so once you see it everywhere, it's there. It's in your face. You can't look away. And I was reaching for somebody else to be able to do the work, doing a lot of research. Where can I take all this food waste? What can I do with it? And when I saw that there wasn't anything in Jacksonville, for a brief moment, I was a little dejected. Um, but that burning desire never went away. And so rather than waiting for somebody else to do it, I just decided, like, why wait? I can do it myself. So that's when I fell into a rabbit hole to see what it would take to do the work. And then I did it.
And how many years have you been in business now?
It'll be 10 years in March.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And so your path has been both through sort of methods and routes that you've created for yourself, but also you've worked through official channels. You work for the city of Jacksonville with sustainability and outreach. You've served on the Soil and Water Conservation Board with the city of Jacksonville. How do those experiences compare?
I love doing this work. I like to say that I have like a servant's heart. Whatever I can do to volunteer and to put my efforts behind what I'm passionate about, like I'm going to do it. And so all of the volunteer work that I've done leading up to my position with the city has been wonderful, and it's been stepping stones to get me to where I am. And I've built a lot of connections with a lot of different people. Working with the Soil and Water Conservation District, it's a nonpartisan position. So you meet lots and lots of people across all avenues, all demographics, walks of life, and all sorts of different organizations too within the sustainability and environmental ecology sphere. And then now with my new role with the city of Jacksonville, it's a new position. I just started about a month ago. But I'm utilizing all these lessons and connections that I've gathered over this last decade of work to further this sustainability education within the city.
If you're just joining us, we are talking about youth activism and optimism in the face of daunting environmental challenges. If you'd like to join our conversation or if you have questions for our panelists, you can give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or you can reach out on social media. Jimmy, I want to ask you, I mean, there are a lot of issues that the Riverkeeper tackles, whether it's legislative issues dealing with the Federal Clean Water Act, climate change, pollution of all kinds. And yet there are really kind of micro issues that you are also tackling. And litter, I think, might surprise people as one of them, because that seems like, well, that's a pretty small scale concern. But it is not really. I mean, it really does have big impacts. Can you talk about why it impacts the place people live and what you've learned recently about how much the city spends or doesn't spend on kind of taking care of that problem?
Yeah, litter's a huge problem. Matter of fact, when I took this job over 21 years ago, I never thought of litter as being one of the top threats to the health of the river. I thought it was more aesthetic. Yes, there's some concerns for wildlife.
Or polluters.
Right. But the more you learn, it is a serious problem. One, as these especially as we have so many plastics now, as these plastics break down in the environment, they can become microplastics, which we all have in our bodies, unfortunately, can be ingested by wildlife. They can become choking hazards for wildlife. They also release a ton of chemicals that are really dangerous to the health of and harmful to the health of the waterways and to wildlife. So they're really a huge problem. And once they get in the waterways, trash and litter, it's really hard to get it out because, one, we don't have agencies that take responsibility for removing it. So it's really up to the citizens. Once it's there, it's our responsibility to remove it.
There is no agency to clean up the river bottom or the river.
Once it's in the water. So that's part of the problem too, is it's really hard to remove, and then it starts breaking down. And so it's a huge problem. It's not just an environmental issue either. It affects property values when you have litter and trash in neighborhoods. It affects tourism. So it's an economic issue. It's a human health issue. They can actually be, it can be a pathway for pathogens and things like that. So it's a big problem, and unfortunately, and we all know it exists. We drive around Jacksonville, you see, I was driving here on my way here, just noticing how much trash there is along our roadways. And fortunately, in Jacksonville, we don't spend a lot of money on removing trash. And so that's one thing the mayor has tried and advocated to the city council to try to get some more funding Unfortunately, City Council did not approve it, but I think that's something we've got to make sure that there's more funding and effort behind it because it's a big problem. I'll say too that speaking of young people, what's really exciting too is we have a young professionals group called Rising Tides, and a good example is I think trash and cleanups, which we do a lot of, are a great way to get people involved in environmental issues because it's something you can go out and you can see the impact of a couple of hours you put in cleaning up. And so it's been fun. So they've actually, for 12 years now, every month, they go and clean up a section of McCoy's Creek. I mean, every single month. And that just, to me, says a lot about the resolve and the commitment of younger people to roll their sleeves up, get involved like these folks here around the table, and they're not giving up. And they continue. I even am a bit amazed. I'm like, I think I would have given up after 10 years cleaning up the same waterway and continued to come back and see trash each month. But it just demonstrates what I think makes me excited and what is one of the reasons we have to get more young people involved. It's because environmental issues are a top concern. Look at polling. Climate change, for one, is oftentimes one of the top issues for young voters. And yet they're not often at the table with these larger environmental groups or where decisions are being made. And so we've got to create platforms for folks to get involved. And we're fortunate to have the folks here around this table that are really doing that successfully in
I
Jacksonville.
just want to, on the funding issue, make sure that we are clear because you have found that the solid waste division, which is basically the litter crews, they contract with cleanup crews, that several years ago, that budget was about $2 million and there was 12 or 13 people employed for that purpose. Now that budget is $250,000 and there's just 2 crews. And so the ability to clean up the city is just greatly diminished. And as you say, the effort to put more money back into the budget for that did not make it through the budget process.
Right. And yes, and that was 10, 12 years ago that we were spending $2 million a year. And you think about how much Jacksonville's grown since then too.
Yeah.
So we're spending a fraction of what we were. And what's happened is that puts the onus on the volunteers and the citizens to be the ones that go out and clean it up. I think to the mayor's credit, she's trying to address this problem and tried to get more funding. But we've got to get our city council to also step up and take responsibility. I think we can do more with volunteers, but it can't just be on the backs of volunteers to resolve this problem. Our local government has to be involved and play a bigger role in that.
Rhiley, I sort of led with the idea of something called imperfect environmentalism, which is something that seems to be a strategy to, I mean, it's an idea that's based in social science, but a way of getting people to see themselves as part of a continuum instead of somebody that has to solve the problem all by themselves. And so there's sort of this increasing movement, particularly to try to bring young people into the movement, saying, you know, you don't have to be a perfect vegan, but you can work at it. You don't have to be a perfect plastics-free person, but you can try. And I'm wondering if you have thoughts about how strategies like that work with younger people in terms of, because the problem is so large, it does seem like can be just off-putting.
Yeah. I think that's very impactful for my generation. Like off of what Jimmy said of just, putting it back on local government and, our public officials of, hey, like this is something that's something that is important to us, right? And I think when you think of imperfect environmentalism, I think people think that they have to be this big official or big leader in the community where it's like, okay, I have the resources to do things, so on Watered Down, I say, okay, here are things that you can do, right? I feel like if everybody does something small, it can be really impactful, right? So maybe not you're a vegan the whole time, but maybe you have Meatless Monday, right? So you're doing something, and then if everybody's contributing to it, it's a more impactful. But if it's just a small collective doing a little bit, then it's not as impactful what it could be if everybody's doing something.
Yeah. Ryan, one issue that you have made a bit of a campaign on your site is a Senate bill that was approved this last summer by the legislature. And it's something that local governments are currently wrestling with. It has to do with development codes and essentially what they can or can't change. A lot of cities, counties right now are finding that their comprehensive planning is getting rejected at the state level. It's creating a lot of confusion. What can you tell us about Senate Bill, is it 180?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, it was titled Emergencies, and it was sold as a hurricane relief bill, basically allowing folks to make it easier for them to rebuild, probably following a disaster. But the language in it really favored development, and it's loosely worded. There's a term in there that if any kind of laws or rules or anything that makes development more restrictive or burdensome, and that's really left up to the beholder, then they can challenge it. And that is what's happening. So it could be comprehensive plans, zoning, impact fee increases, or if a local government is trying to protect rural lands or wetlands, they're meeting these challenges, and it's going, all the way up to the Capitol, and it's creating havoc. I think it's going to be a problem that we don't see right away, but as local governments are encountering these obstacles, it's going to be a significant problem. We have the legislative session that's starting in early January, and it's a great time to amend that bill and to get that language out of there, return it to be like a hurricane relief bill, and then return the power back to the local governments, the counties and the cities, so they can manage their development better. And truly, you want the local citizens having a say what's going on in their local counties and governments and everything else.
Jimmy, it's a balance, especially places that have been impacted by a major storm. You want people to be able to rebuild and to find, get their home back in order. But there is also this, countervailing pressure that says sometimes we need to make changes to the way that we have built, whether it's creating, buildings that are higher off the ground or further back from waterways. And it can be very hard post crisis to tell people, well, you need to invest more, or you need to, create a structure that's more resilient when they're just trying to make ends meet.
Yeah, it can be really hard, but at the same time, we put ourselves and make our lives much more challenging down the road. If we don't build sustainably, we're not building smart, we're not in a smart way, avoiding building in floodplains and things like that, and building, with sustainable practices. It's going to come back, and we're going to see it's going to be more problems for our community down the road. So I think it's an investment in the future, and that's what we have to look at, is that we're trying to build more resilient communities, and sometimes we can't look past that just because we're trying to rebuild quickly after a disaster. Because our state is facing literally a crisis in our state with in terms of the threats from climate change and from future storms. And so we can't allow that to be an excuse not to do it the right way.
Yeah. Tiffany, I want to ask you just a little bit about climate anxiety, because that's something that can be really overwhelming. We know that a study that was published in The Lancet and is posted on the NIH website says that almost 60% of people between the ages of 16 and 25, so 59% of people in that age group, are worried or extremely worried about climate catastrophe, about, impending, environmental doom in some way or another. How do you talk constructively about these issues? How do you keep your chin up when you're working towards environmental solutions on any scale, small or large?
What a great question. Very heavy too. I have a bit of anxiety just in general, and it is exasperated when it comes to climate concerns. I think that that's ultimately why I started volunteering for so many different organizations, is because there's not much I feel like I can do on a big, large scale. So I kind of withdraw into my local community instead, and just kind of focus on the effects that I can have immediately outside of me and my home. And so keeping it hyper local has been the best way that I found to kind of combat that anxiety. And so going into like what Rhiley was saying, being like an imperfect environmentalist, just doing what I can where I can, and advocating and educating other people in hopes that it will have that ripple effect and that more people will do it. And so I feel like that kind of helps quell and calm those nerves to some extent. But it is really hard. It is very hard to deal with. And I applaud all the people in this environmental sphere for doing the work that they do because it can get overwhelming, but everyone's doing the best that they can. And I appreciate you all so much.
Riley, I'd get your thoughts on that as well. I know that people of my generation started, learning about the environment at a point where the challenges were seemingly much more um, manageable. Things like, point source pollution, whether a factory was dumping into water or not. Um, you know, Deforestation, which is still happening on a large scale, but things like a warming planet are kind of on a whole different level. And those really weren't things that I feel like, I learned about as a young person. But you've grown up knowing these things. How does that shape how you think about the future? How does it shape how you approach your environmental work?
I think you look at it as, okay, this is something that is not going away. With the climate anxiety, I think about how nature works, right? Nature is that of it teaches you how to rest, right? So in those moments where you feel like this is too much or this is a lot, lots going on in the climate realm, and I that happens to me all the time. You get burnout, but then I am reminded that nature has seasons, right? There's a spring, there's a autumn, there's a winter, and those seasons kind of delve into how you exert your energy, right? So that's kind of how I think of it. As a young person, this is an issue that I feel we're going to be tackling for a few more decades, probably. So you can't try to eat the whole sandwich. You got to take bits and pieces.
Yeah. I just have a question, I think, for all of you, what your thoughts are. I feel like a lot of the energy that maybe previously would have been spent on thinking about environmental things is very often channeled now to quote unquote wellness. And so people take a very close look at their own health and nutrition and personal practices and perhaps focus a little less on things like, the way things are made or pollution or biodiversity. But that they're kind of trying to solve those problems in a much more kind of individual way. Do you think that that is challenging for the movement writ large? I mean, do you think that it distracts attention, focus, passion?
Um, uh, that is a very good question, actually. I think anything that we do, there's obviously going to be a balance, right? I think that right now with the internet and smartphones, we have an amazing amount of tools to see what our impact really is. So yeah, if we lean, I think too much in any direction, it can be a challenge. But have I seen that in the work I do in activism? I haven't seen anything really definitive where I see that clearly impacting it. But yeah, I think it's basically looking at our world around us and ourselves, and then making the best decisions there.
Ryan, I'll start with you. But if there was one thing that you could ask people just briefly to do, having heard the work that you do, what would you like them to do? I'm going to ask everybody, but
One thing is, I used to be very hopeless when I saw, some of this development harming our environment and, the deterioration of some of our habitats around Florida. But knowing that we can make a difference, like with the Florida State Park development fiasco we saw a little over a year ago, folks really got animated about it and they made a change. I mean, those plans got shelved in a week,
Mm.
right? So everybody saw that when they contacted their elected officials, when they got out and did some demonstrations and rallies that in a very peaceful, responsible manner, that that makes an impact, and that's what I want folks to know. You see something, we have a process. It's not always perfect, but when we do have victories, celebrate them, and when things don't go our way, learn from it, and then move on because there's always going to be something right around the corner.
your thoughts, Riley?
Um, get outside. I think people have there's a disconnection between people and place, right? I think if people go outside more and actually experience nature, the springs that you talk about, the walkways, our emerald green trail that we just enacted. I think if people actually get outside and take in nature, they'll see how beautiful it is, and they'll create the sense of stewardship of I need to take care of this.
Tiffany?
Support the people that are doing the work, get behind them, support their causes, volunteer where you can, and yeah, just do the work. Like, we got to do the work. We can't avoid it. We can't put our head in the sand. Like, we have to get out there and get our hands a little dirty sometimes.
Jimmy?
Yeah, I mean, similar to what they said. I think we really have to. People need to realize that they can make a difference. Like Ryan said, I think that sometimes we feel like it's not worth it. My voice doesn't matter, but it does. It can. And and what we realized with the parks issue too is that that was a nonpartisan issue. People across the board. So in this partisan environment we're in, that really demonstrated that some of these issues everybody cares about. This is not a partisan issue. And the same is like with climate change. I think, with climate change, a lot of people don't realize that their friends and family probably are concerned about it too. Polling shows that people think other people don't care like they do, so they don't talk about it. So we've got to talk about these issues. We have to find community, because that's what people ultimately need too, is to know that they're in this with other people, and they are. And so that's one of the things I'm hoping is through this dialogue, we can try to bring more people into the conversation, and then we'll end up seeing more action as a result.
Well, Jimmy, Orth, Ryan Worthington, Tiffany Bess, Rhiley, Kay, Hodges, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank
you
you
so much.
Loved it.
All right. Up next, a 65-year-old art institution gets a fresh start with a new leader. Welcome back. Well, a new leader has taken the helm at a Jacksonville art institution more than 6 decades after its founding. Here to tell us what she's got planned is Kim Noble. She's the new executive director and CEO of the Cummer Museum of Art and Gardens. Kim, good morning.
Good morning.
So you became official on September 2nd, so it's been a little bit. The Board of Trustees sent out their news release. So you've been official for about a month, but you've actually been doing this job for several months. You've been working on an interim basis since May, and you took over after Andrea Brownlee retired,
Correct.
the former
Yes.
CEO of the Cummer. So tell me a little bit about settling into this job, how it's been, what has surprised you, if anything, about the work that you are now doing?
It has been truly an honor to step into this role. I'm very grateful to be here as the CEO of the museum, which has had such a long history of being a cultural a cultural landmark for the city of Jacksonville. I have known and loved the Cummer my entire life as a Jacksonville native, and grew up going to the Cummer, had my bridal portraits taken there, and I obviously served as a CFO, most recently the institution's first CFO. So it's been fabulous to step into the role and to have wonderful conversations with donors. My background as the CFO and as a business individual has really given me a leg up in terms of being able to talk to donors. And what has surprised me has been the community reaction. People have loved the Cummer for so long, and I've been really encouraged by the conversations that I've had with donors in the community. The outpouring of support from the community has been just a wonderful reaction to the news.
What can you tell us about, I mean, you say your background, you were CFO, the first CFO at the Cummer, but your background is very much in finance and business.
Yes.
And it seems like a little bit of a new direction for the museum. I think in the past it's been people drawn more directly from an arts background. So what do you think is going on there? What is your board going for in this hire with you?
I think my background, both as CFO and someone who has a finance and investor relations background, lends itself to having wonderful conversations and tough conversations with donors and corporate sponsors who view donations as investments. I'm able to have tough conversations, sit down with individuals who really want to look under the hood, if you will, and understand the nuts and bolts of the financials. And I've had very encouraging conversations with some of those long term donors and stakeholders. It lends itself to really having those conversations and explaining to them what they're investing in, if you will, and what their donor dollars are going to go towards. And it has been encouraging, and people have been very positive about having someone with financial acumen at the helm and looking towards the long-term financial sustainability of the organization.
Is it intimidating at all to step into an organization with this, incredible history, this incredible collection, and not have that art background? Or do you feel like you're kind of learning as you go?
A bit has been learning as I go, but it also gives me the opportunity to let my very strong leadership team shine. We're a great team, and Holly Karras, our Jay Wayne and Dolores Barr-Weaver chief curator, is extremely talented. She is the talent behind our compelling exhibitions, and I have been very fortunate to have a very strong leadership team to rely on. And so, to me, it enables us to all have the opportunity to step up and work as a team.
You mentioned, growing up in Jacksonville. Do you have an early memory of going there as a young person or a child?
I do. I have a memory of being in the gardens and thinking that they were just really the most enchanted space or enchanting space that I had experienced at the time. My mother was a gardener growing up, so I had a love of flowers and landscape. And I can remember being in the gardens probably on a field trip whenever I was young and just seeing them and thinking, wow, this is just a fantastic space.
And you also were there for your wedding photos?
Yes.
With the
yes,
tree, I guess, in the background?
Yes, with many different locations.
Yeah, it is a lovely space.
It is.
What will you use personally to benchmark success for yourself in this role? And is that the same metric that your board will use?
For me, success will be making sure that the Cummer is represented at the table in Jacksonville as this wonderful city continues to grow. Being a Jacksonville native, I have observed the city of Jacksonville growing over the last few decades, and I want to make sure that the Cummer grows along with the city of Jacksonville. So for me, what excites me is forging new community partnerships, making sure that the Cummer continues to grow along with the city of Jacksonville, and I believe the board is very excited about that as well. Nina and Arthur Cummer did not have a child who survived infancy, so the museum was Nina Cummer's passion. The gardens and the art collection that she originally bequeathed to become the museum was her passion. And it's very exciting to me to make sure that we are there for the long haul and that we continue to steward her gift to the city of Jacksonville for the long term.
And she also carried a lot of civic activism. She played a big role in sort of beautification, scenic beauty in this area. Does the museum still have a role in that area, or is it really kind of constrained to the grounds of the museum?
We, she did a lot for what we would call today quality of life. And in addition to being a museum with gardens on the National Register of Historic Places, we also have programs that benefit women who are low vision or no vision. We have one of the largest festivals in the United States for children of differing abilities every year, and it's something that we look forward to on an annual basis. Our staff, the volunteers look forward to it. It's called Arts for All every May. And we have programs for people who are living with dementia and their caregivers. So we also have things that go beyond the four walls, if you will, of the museum. We also have a program called Cummer in the Community, where our education department, learning and education department, goes out and works with children in the community to make sure that they are also receiving arts education. So we are still fulfilling her vision of a place of culture and beauty for all outside of the walls of the four walls of the museum.
You also have a free opportunity for people to attend the museum at no cost.
Yes, we do. We are free the first Saturday of every month. We are free the third Tuesday of every month. And we also just completed our 7th annual Summer at the Cummer Festival. We were very excited about that because we had a 59% increase over the prior year. We had actually lines for 2 of the 4 Fridays down the block, down Riverside Avenue. We welcomed over 5,000 guests, and I have to give a quick thanks to City, who sponsored this year's festival. So we do have several different opportunities for free admission, and you can see more on our website.
Do you think people will see a change under your leadership? Do you want them to feel any different when they walk into the museum?
Absolutely, and I think they already have. I've received that feedback from both our trustees, our donors, and some of our guests. Yes, I think there's a new energy in terms of the museum. I think our staff feel it. I think that our stakeholders are feeling it. And we are very excited to be implementing our strategic plan, moving forward with our financial plan that we recently completed. And again, just having a seat at the proverbial table in the city of Jacksonville so that we can ensure that we grow over the next few years with this wonderful city.
Where does the Cummer fit into the overall cultural landscape, given all of the kind of other options, other things that the city offers, including other museums?
We have a long legacy of being a landmark institution and the preeminent cultural institution in the city of Jacksonville. And our goal is to solidify that. We have a long history of very strong financial stewardship. We have a very strong endowment, thanks in many part to our strong donorship. And I want to give a quick thanks to the Cultural Council of Greater Jacksonville for supporting us as well. And we fit in as the preeminent and the cultural institution of the city of Jacksonville in terms of a landmark cultural institution.
A big milestone is coming up for the museum. Is that right? It's going to be the
Yes.
is it 65th? anniversary?
65th in November of 2026. And we are also celebrating Nina Cummer's 150th birthday later this month, October 16th. Would have been her 150th birthday. We will have a free admission on that day as well and programming, so we would like to invite the community to come and attend that. We have tours that focus on her original 60 works of art that she gave to start the museum, and so we're very excited to celebrate sort of bookends with her 150th birthday and then our 65th anniversary in November of 2026.
Anything special planned for the next November?
Yes, absolutely. We will have a large celebration, and we're going to be celebrating throughout the year. So more to come on that. But yes, we are having a large gala in November of 2026 to celebrate.
Donors are a big part of the financial sustainability of the museum. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yes. We are very, very fortunate to have so many long-term donors, and I want to say how thankful we are to those. We have a strong endowment, in part thanks to so many of our long-term, very loyal donors. Our endowment supports about 1/3 of our operating budget, and then 1/3 is driven by what's called other earned income, which is admissions, facility rentals, things like that. And then the other 1/3 is driven by contributions from current donors. So we are very grateful to the city of Jacksonville and our donorship base.
Well, Kim Noble, it's very exciting to have you at the helm there. I look forward to your leadership, and thanks a lot for coming over to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, all right. Up next, live local chamber music from classical to contemporary.
I'm Scott Tong. Local officials from Texas to North Carolina have complained that disaster relief from FEMA comes too slowly. But when a wealthy political donor asked Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem to repair a tourist attraction in Florida, the federal dollars flowed. Next time, Here and Now.
Today at 1 on WJCT News 89.9.
On the next Fresh Air, President Trump has stepped up pressure for the DOJ to pursue his political enemies. One of them, former FBI Director James Comey, was indicted last week. Legal scholar and former U.S. Attorney Barbara McQuaid joins us to discuss what this means for U.S. law and the precedent it sets. Join us.
Today at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
Author Dan Wang traveled across China to discover a major difference between there and the U.S. In China, they build stuff. Huge dams, high-speed rail, hospitals virtually overnight. China is an engineering society, Wang says, while the U.S. is a lawyerly one, bringing legalisms to block almost everything, bad or good. But Wang says that doesn't mean the U.S. should look to China as a model. Find out why on the next On Point.
Today at 11, here on WJCT News 89.9.
Federal workers who took the fork-in-the-road buyout are getting their final paychecks. Now the White House is threatening to use a government shutdown to further hollow out the federal workforce.
I'm really scared about what this shutdown will bring and worried about what it means for my family as well as the future of our government.
We check in on federal workers and take your calls. That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, it's a musical tradition that's been described as four rational people conversing. Here to tell us about bringing that conversation to the First Coast is Susan Pardue. She is the founder of the Florida Chamber Music Project. Susan, good morning. So classical chamber music, it dates, back to the Renaissance, I suppose, but it has evolved in the century since then. What made you want to bring the form to local audiences?
I love chamber music. I love the intimacy of it. I'm a member of the Jacksonville Symphony, and I love that kind of music, the big, grand orchestral music, but I also love the smaller, more intimate music, and it's a different literature, too. So just the desire to have to bring that music and play that music.
And so chamber music, not always, but I guess very often is this string quartet. Can you describe a little bit about, what makes up that sound, why it's different than seeing a performance by an orchestra?
Well, we do mostly play string quartets. It's different because in our venue, the audience is much closer. It's much more up close and personal, much more of an intimate experience. I think that the audience can actually feel our energy, and we can certainly feel theirs. And so it's a live music thing that only happens in that moment when the audience feels our energy, we feel theirs, and something new happens.
And I guess it may go without saying for some people who are familiar with music, but there's no conductor. It really is these four people kind of vibing off of each other, and reacting to each other, performing as a unit, but without direction. How does that impact how you play?
Well, so it is four people kind of conversing musically, and so we have to play in a way that telegraphs to each other what we're doing. So, but because we're sitting so close, we can hear a breath, and we see cues from each other, and we have to know each other's parts.
Right. And so this is made up, I guess, of two violins and a cello and viola, and you're the viola.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's an instrument that you've played your whole life. It's what you play with the symphony.
It is.
How does your playing change when you're in this small and intimate setting?
Well, I play probably more and bigger in a string quartet than I would in the orchestra. In the orchestra, I have to blend with everybody on stage, and in a quartet, I do too, but there are only three other people.
Is the music still as prescripted as it is in terms of, it's not like a jazz type improvisation setting. It is still kind of adhering very closely to the written music.
It's still adhering to what the composer put on the page.
Okay. And so your work that you've been presenting, you do a mix of, more familiar classical names, Haydn, Beethoven, Mozart, and then you also do more contemporary works. What is it? Is there an overall theme to the type of music that you choose to perform?
No, our it's all music among friends, and I try to bring all music that I think the audience will like, and that I can music that I believe in, and so this upcoming concert this Sunday, the music is very hopeful to me. So it's music of hope.
Tell us what you're going to be performing at this next one. You're going to be doing some Mendelssohn.
Yes, we're doing a Mendelssohn quartet that he wrote while he was on his honeymoon. And we are also doing a quartet by Kevin Putz that was written in 2006. And it's an interesting piece. It's called Credo. And he was commissioned to write a piece in 2006 that was to show the lighter side of America and of the United States. And he didn't feel particularly good about the country at that point because we were in a war in the Middle East and there was a lot of gun violence. And so he wrote the piece about places where he found solace. And so there's a movement about a violin shop outside New York where he's listening to the various sounds in the shop because he liked to go to the shop. And then there's a movement called infrastructure where he ran a lot. He was a runner, and it's about the running trails in Pittsburgh and the traffic that he could hear around him. And then there's a movement that's inspired by a woman teaching her daughter how to dance that he saw through a window, this scene of a mother teaching her child how to dance.
Oh, interesting.
And then there's another movement about the traffic, and then there's a movement called Credo, and it's about his beliefs that we can do better.
And he's a really acclaimed composer. I mean, he has
Yes.
won, I guess, a Pulitzer Prize for an opera that he wrote in 2012. And he's also, he's a faculty member at Juilliard, or was, I guess, pretty recently.
Yes, and he had an opera that was done by the Met in the last couple of years called The Hours, and it was one of the operas that was featured where they show in the movies. So
Yeah.
he's very well known.
So this next performance that we're talking about is October 5th, but in fact, your performances run through May. And again, it was a variety of artists that you perform. We mentioned Beethoven, Mozart, but there are tickets available. It's a fairly intimate setting, so there are
Yes.
not a ton of tickets available. Is it flchambermusic.org?
flchambermusic.org.
Okay. Susan Pardue, thanks for coming on, letting us know about your work. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And that's our program. Thank you for listening. If you have comments or questions, you can send either to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org, or you can reach out to First Coast Connect at WJCT. Apologies. If you have missed anything, you can catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock or find our entire archive on your favorite podcast platform. First Coast Connect is produced by Stacey Bennett, and our associate producer is Isabella Casapow. Michelle Coram and Andrew Wickman manage our sound and video boards, and our theme music is performed by Club de Belugas. Join us tomorrow when we discuss how safe harbor laws designed to aid sex trafficking victims are actually failing them.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com.
Join me, Courtney Lewis, the Jacksonville Symphony and the Symphony Chorus on October 17th and 18th.